Last week, Ranveer Allahbadia appeared on a popular YouTube show, India's Got Latent, hosted by Samay Raina, and this is what transpired.
Watch your parents have sex every day for the rest of your life. Or would you join in once and stop it forever?
Join in what the
Sex.
This question that Ranveer asked seems to be inspired from a Kanan Gill's interview of Jackie Bagnani from back in 2015.
Would you rather watch your parents have every day for the rest of your life, or
it gets worse.
or join in once to stop it?
Oh my god!
As soon as India's Got Latent video was shared on YouTube, it sparked an immediate backlash on social media platforms, with many condemning the comment as offensive and vulgar. Reactions came from everywhere, and people of all walks of life condemned it. Eminent journalist Nilesh Mishra called the clip insensitive and crass. Surprisingly, we saw a rare display of unity among leaders from the complete spectrum of political parties. Maharashtra CM Devendra Fadnavis of BJP called for legal actions against such obscenity.
लेकिन बहुत भद्दे तरीके से कुछ चीज़ों को कहा गया है, प्रेजेंट किया गया है. मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि अभिव्यक्ति इसकी भी कोई मर्यादाएं है. हमारे समाज में हमने अश्लीलता के भी कुछ नियम तैयार किए हैं. अगर उनको कोई पार करता है तो ये बहुत गलत बात है. अगर ऐसी कोई बात होती है तो उसके ऊपर कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए.
Congress spokesperson Supriya Shirne tweeted condemning the act as pervert. The news channels played their part, and we saw a non-stop coverage of the offensive clip of the show, calling for a ban on such shows.
माँ बाप जिन्हें ईश्वर का दर्जा दिया गया उनके बारे में ऐसी भद्दी, अश्लील, बेहुदी टिप्पणी की जाती है. करोड़ों लोग इस कंटेंट को देखते हैं.
As a result, Ranveer Allahbadia issued a public apology.
My comment wasn't just inappropriate, it wasn't even funny. Comedy is not my forte. I'm just here to say sorry.
Further, Samay Raina was forced to remove all his content from India's Got Latent show. So, seems like everyone is criticizing Ranveer Allahbadia and Samay Raina, left, right and center. Everyone from the political circle seems to be jumping on the bandwagon to outrightly ban the popular comedy show of India's Got Latent. However, there are people on the other side of the spectrum, mostly celebs and other comedians, backing Samay and India's Got Latent, and calling this whole reaction as a means to stifle people's artistic expression. That has a broader chilling effect on the right to free speech and expression. So, we are once again at a crossroad. Should the government ban all the content where profanity and sexually explicit words are used? Or do we have an absolute freedom of speech and expression? What is the law of land on this matter? What right and to what extent the citizens of this nation have this right to freedom of speech and expression? In this video, we will objectively try to analyze the ins and the outs of this whole issue. We will first see all the legal actions that have been taken against Ranveer Allahbadia and Samay Raina so far. Mumbai police filed FIRs against Ranveer Allahbadia and Samay Raina for allegedly making obscene content under Section 67 of the IT Act. The Assam police registered a case against Ranveer Allahbadia and others involved in the show for allegedly promoting obscenity and engaging in sexually explicit discussions, which was later even confirmed by Assam's Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma. Later, National Commission for Women summoned Ranveer Allahbadia, Samay Raina, and other comedians for the vulgar and offensive remarks. This was followed by Maharashtra's Commission for Women calling for ban on India's Got Latent show. Okay, so we'll first understand the legal standing of all these FIRs and how far the call out to ban on such content is right, because that's the heart of the issue. The whole incident revolves around citizens' right to freedom of speech and expression. This right is enshrined in the Constitution of India under Article 19(1)(a). This article says all citizens shall have the right to freedom of speech and expression. However, this is not an absolute right. The Constitution itself provides some limitations on this right. Under Clause 2 of the same article, it says the state can make laws that impose reasonable restrictions on this right in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of nation, the security of the state, friendly relations with the foreign states, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to an offense. Of course, this current matter of India's got latent will have this freedom of speech restricted, if at all, on the grounds of decency or morality. That's where we will keep our focus. Further, Section 294 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita criminalizes the creation and sale of obscene materials, including electronic content. In simple terms, it defines obscenity as material that is overtly and excessively sexual or that has the potential to deprave and corrupt those who consume it. So if I summarize, there are two laws at play. First, the Constitution gives the right to freedom of speech and expression. But it also enables state to make laws to impose reasonable restrictions on the exercise of this right on the grounds of decency and morality. Secondly, Parliament, deriving powers from the Constitution, has enacted Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, where it defines obscenity as something that is excessively sexual and that corrupts the mind of those who consume it. Long story short, if some form of expression is obscene, it is supposed to be restricted. It does not come under the protection of freedom of speech and expression. For example, pornography. The whole thing boils down to this: how to define obscenity. Ashleelta kya hai? This question has come up before court multiple times over the last 50 years. We will take a road down history to understand as to what constitutes as obscenity in the eyes of the law. Interestingly, Supreme Court has come up with a test to determine as to what constitutes obscenity. This test is called Community Standards Test. This test was actually propounded back in 2014 in Avik Sarkar case. There are two important parts of the test. First, the court said the obscenity has to be judged from the point of view of an average person and we should apply contemporary community standards. So the key phrases here are average person and contemporary community standards. सरल भाषा में इसका मतलब है कि कोई भी कंटेंट ऑब्सीन तभी माना जाएगा जब वो आज के समाज के एक आम आदमी की नज़रों में ऑब्सीन होगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर आज के समाज में आम तौर पर लोग गाली गलौज करके बात करते हैं तो किसी भी कंटेंट में गाली गलौज होगी तो वो ऑब्सीन नहीं होगा. दिस इज द कम्युनिटी स्टैंडर्ड्स टेस्ट. सेकेंड, द मटीरियल शुड नॉट बी जज्ड इन आइसोलेशन बट रादर एज अ होल so that conclusions are not made out of context. This test was aimed to reflect modern societal norms and values, recognizing that not all potentially offensive material is obscene. Interestingly, this test was actually again applied last year in 2024 in college romance web series case, where the creators were accused of using vulgar language and sexual content. The Supreme Court ruled that there is a distinction between what is obscene and a language that is simply foul, indecent, and profane. The court applied the community standards test, ruling that these so-called vulgar words used in the web series reflected emotions like anger, frustration, or excitement, and they did not evoke lust or sexual arousal in an average viewer. So, just because some language is foul, indecent, and profane, it cannot be called obscene. अगर किसी कंटेंट में गाली गलौज है तो वो सिर्फ उसी कारण की वजह से अश्लील नहीं बन जाती. The effect of content is also important, and obscenity is restricted to whether that content evokes lust or sexual arousal for an average viewer of the community. So this is the law of the land. Now, let's come back to the current case at hand of Ranveer Allahbadia, Samay Raina, and India's Got Latent. I'm not going to repeat what they said. It's all out there. But if we look at it objectively and applying this community standards test, for an average viewer, it's not going to evoke sexual or lustful thoughts in any way. The language was merely profane. And looking at the whole context, the intent of the show was to make jokes and make people laugh. So my reading of the whole situation definitely inclines me towards considering it as not obscene as defined in the law. And thus, it falls within the purview of right to freedom of speech and expression. Which effectively means what these content creators did is not a crime. And this also means any call for ban on such content does not have a legal basis. Having said that, do I agree with what was said by Ranveer Allahbadia and Samay Raina? No. Did I like what they said on the show? No. But does that make it illegal? Still no. This is what right to freedom of speech and expression means. Voltaire actually puts it very succinctly when he says, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. This is the essence of freedom of speech and expression. People may find the jokes offensive, like myself. But do we have any such right as the right not to be offended? No. The Constitution does not give us right to seek any remedy when we are offended. If you are offended, don't watch it. Now that's the lawyer in me talking. But I do not want to reduce this whole issue to just its legal aspect. The law will take its own course, and I'm sure the courts will do justice as they always have. But just because something is within the ambits of the law, does it also make it the right thing to do? Taking a step further, just because something is within the ambit of the law, does it also mean that it should be either by a positive action or at least by a passive inaction be encouraged? You know what? Cheating or extramarital affair is not a crime. It's individual choice of life and liberty. No one is going to put you behind the bars for such an action. But would you encourage such behavior in a society? Or do you think it has the potential to shake the very foundations of a family and in effect the whole society? Think about it. Life is not lived in the black and white of legality and illegality. There are 50 shades of grey of ethics and morality in between. So, I want to take this opportunity to broaden this discussion of free speech, of profane language, as to what it means to us as citizens of this society and Indian nation. If you look at over the last few years, with the booming of OTT platforms and YouTube becoming the biggest platform of consuming content after TV, we see a trend of rise in vulgar, abusive, and profane content. What we see in India's Got Latent is just a culmination of that trend. I'm sure even one of the earliest TV shows like Roadies, where we saw initial use of profanity, are themselves surprised, probably pleasantly, with the freedom with which Samay Raina has used, or shall I say abused, this freedom of speech in his show. But the larger question is, do we as a society, A, celebrate this kind of content, B, stay indifferent to this, or C, do we need to call this out? These are the only three options you have, and you cannot not pick a side. एक तो चुनना ही होगा. I, for one, am absolutely clear this content is vulgar, it's pathetic, and it needs to be called out in as many words. And I will not hesitate to say this kind of content is not cool. Samay Raina is not cool. Carrie Minati is not cool. India's Got Latent is not cool. If you think it's your right to make content full of profanity and curse and swear words, it's people's right to call it out as vulgar and pathetic as well. Not only they have right to not watch your content, which is one of the frequent arguments thrown around as a defense, but they also have a right to influence others to not to see your content. See, I'm not in any way supporting online bullying of any sorts, but if people en masse take it to social media and express some form of discontent with some expletive content the creators are making, the creator better be ready to face the wrath of it and its associated consequences. See, I'm sure these legal cases will not see the light of the day, and none of these chaps is going to go behind the bars, and they should not. But after all this is said and done, I would dare these content creators to still go ahead and make this kind of expletive content, even if they lose out on brand deals. Do this maa behan ki gali, even if they lose out on guests on their shows and podcasts. Do you think any of these content creators have the guts and the balls to make such content when they will lose out on money as a result of people calling out this pathetic absurdity in the name of comedy? Because let me remind you, they have a right to free speech and expression, but they don't have the right to make money out of it. So, I guess in the end, it's a win-win situation. You exercise your right to freedom of speech and expression and make content full of maa behan ki gali, and people on the other hand call you out as not worthy. I am happy with this proposition. What I am not happy with is the normalization of content full of expletives, abuse, and profanity under the garb of freedom of speech and expression. I do not want a young, impressionable kid to idolize a Carrie Minati or a Samay Raina. वो नहीं होने देंगे. ये लड़ाई इनको जेल भेजने की नहीं है. ये लड़ाई सही और गलत की है. समाज को किस दिशा में लेके जाना है, उसकी है. The highest virtue that we as Bharatiya cherish is not rights, but dharma. And the word that comes closest to dharma in English is duty, and certainly not religion. Rights and duties go hand in hand. Is the right to freedom of speech and expression important? Of course it is, no two ways about it. But does it not come with associated duties? क्या है एक भारत के नागरिक होने का धर्म? Especially when you call yourself an influencer. Even if you think you are free to not abide by some common civic and human duties, good for you. But this needs to be called out. This is not who we want to be. This is not who we aspire to be. And this is not where we would like the needle of the moral compass of society to shift. So this fight will be fought not in the courts of law. This fight will be fought in the courts of public opinion, media, and society at large. Because this is a fight of opinions, this is a fight of narratives, which has as big an impact on the society and nation as the law of the land. This is Rahul Punia. Namaskar. I'll see you in the next one.